Today on Two Mystic Mamas, we have Vanessa Sestina, who is a leadership coach, somatic practitioner, and mom to two very big-hearted kiddos. And she has partnered with hundreds of leaders in 5 continents to live, work, and play in ways that honor the full expression of their aliveness. You can learn more about Vanessa on her website at vanessasestina.com, and that is Sestina. Welcome to Two Mystic Mamas. Hi, Rachel.
Hello, Krystyn.
How are you?
I'm good. Good. We can't forget our third wheel today.
We have. She's not a third wheel. She's a very important guest.
We could be a tricycle today. We're a tricycle. She's the front. She's the front wheel, and we're the back wheels.
Oh, we're a throuple.
Oh my God! Here we go. Now we're just planting the seed for people to be like,
what is happening over there?
Who's the guest?
So we have this very wonderful guest with us today, Vanessa Sestina. Did I pronounce it correctly?
You did, indeed.
Oh, yay. That's exciting. And she is an amazingly talented and gifted somatic coach, as well as an executive leadership coach, correct?
That's right. Yep.
So welcome to the podcast.
And a mama too, and a wife.
All the roles. We could have a whole podcast about all of our roles, including, I feel like I'm a chaperone on a date right now.
Yes.
With the third wheel. So
sometimes you need to keep Krystyn and I in line.
I did chaperone this morning, you guys.
Oh, you were telling me. What
if you want to talk about full moon, you guys were kind of talking about this right before we started in the podcast with how we were feeling about the full moon energy this week and the lunar eclipse. And I volunteered at the school to help with school picture day this morning. Middle school. And I texted Charlie and I said, 7th grade boys are spawned from the pits of hell. I am convinced, fully convinced. And like one of the teachers came through to get his photo taken. And he was like, the 7th graders had just gone through and the 6th graders were coming in. And I was like, man, I have better hope for these 6th graders. And he was like, I don't know. It's a full moon this week.
Yeah.
They have been crazy.
Yes. Vanessa, have your girls moved into middle school yet?
No, they're 6 and 8.
Okay.
So
well,
they're deep into elementary.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Prepare your soul. Because I love teachers. I think teachers get the short end of the stick in a lot of ways. And I always try to gift my kids teachers and just sing their praises because I think it's such an incredible job. Now that Emmeline is in middle school, I think middle school teachers are like next level heroes, if you will, because just having her home with her emotions that she's moving into with, the changes in her body and all of that, I can't imagine teaching kids and dealing with the ups and downs and the waves of that.
That's so much.
And middle school boys, oh God, bless it all. Graham's he's only in 3rd grade, but
how many kiddos do you have again?
2.
Just
2 kids.
Okay.
Yep.
You had 3 in my mind, so.
Well, let's see what happens. I don't know. I think we're done.
You think?
I thought we were done too. And then Isla came.
So, Vanessa, tell us more about how you got into somatics and what it is you do.
Oof. Okay. Yeah, that's a big question. So I was already a leadership executive coach. And even before I got into coaching, I went on my own somatic journey. And this kicked off, speaking of kiddos and all of that, when I had my first kid. It was a complicated pregnancy, delivery, and then even postpartum. I went through a lot of stuff, including being septic, pretty intensely septic, went back into the hospital, and it was a very intense time. And I had a lot of scarring. I'm just going to get real from the birth. And so that all had happened. I was exposed to some somatic experiencing and cranial sacral therapy to kind of help regulate her, regulate me, co-regulation, all that good stuff. And fast forward to when my second child was born, it was kind of the opposite. Like, boom, she came into the world in 15 minutes of labor, minimal scarring and all of that. And I was working with a physical therapist, a pelvic floor physical therapist, and she was working on some scar tissue from my first child's birth. And as she was working on that, boom, my nervous system flipped out. I went into shock. I didn't even know I was going into shock, but the physical therapist was very trauma informed and slowed things down, put some weighted pillows on me and was like, here's what I see. You're in shock. I don't know what's connected, what experience is connected to this scar tissue. There's a lot for you to process. And so that really revved me up, my interest into somatics and how the body is connected to so much, and just went into a deep dive journey to deepen further into somatics. And I knew that I wanted to combine the two eventually, meaning bringing somatics, the body, into coaching. I also knew kind of ethically to be able to work with other people, I had some work to do myself. And I trusted that I would know when I'd be ready, to bring that to people. So that's a lot of backstory to just say that somatics was so important to me personally. And then I've found, working in coaching, that including sensation, including the body in a very Western intellectual world is a huge opportunity for a lot of people, even just tapping into awareness of the body, let alone all that somatic coaching offers.
Totally. I think for, listeners that are tuning in for the first time hearing the word somatic, but also just listening to your story that you just touched on, would you say that our body stores trauma in different places throughout our lives? Or do you think it was one of those things that because of the birth of your first daughter, where it was super traumatic and your body held on to that, and then you had your second child within a couple years, that it was still so raw? Like, I'm curious to know if you can go back to possibly like a childhood based injury where your body's holding on to something and rework it that way. Like, I know that's kind of a deep question too, but based on what you've experienced, do you think had you not had that experience where you went into shock, do you think you would have continued going down that path or even opening up that flower?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I was ready to peel back the layers. And in my own personal experience, absolutely, the acute trauma is connected to a lot of layers of different experiences in life, having to do with safety, maybe overriding my own intuition, enduring a lot. So it is all interconnected. For me, the experience of that, first of all, the trauma with the birth of my first and what happened afterwards, that was in what we would call in somatic coaching world a huge somatic opening. It busted me wide open, and it was kind of a forced somatic opening. So what we're trying to do in coaching or different modalities is to walk alongside somebody to kind of calibrate in a bit softer way, right? And help people feel resourced to open up as they are ready.
And supported. Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely. And it can just happen, boom, a life experience or something happens and everything is just busted wide open.
Totally. You hear about that too. Like,
yeah, I mean, I can share my own experience too.
We should talk about how Vanessa came into the Two Mystic Mamas fold.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's actually so beautiful. I was working with a client of mine in photography and marketing side of my business, and she is an executive leadership coach. And we had been working together for quite some time, and she connected Vanessa and I because Vanessa was going through, if I'm correct, you were going through your certification process at Strozzi.
That's right. Adding the somatic coaching training at Strozzi. Mm-hmm.
Correct. With the Strozzi Institute. And so that's how we got connected, was through her. And I mean, I will tell this 1,000 times to anybody who's ever heard it or will talk to me. The very first time that I worked with you, Vanessa, I made more progress dealing with my own trauma. And I felt so much healing, like more than years and years and years of cognitive behavioral therapy. Like, I mean, it makes me want to cry. Like you
should cry.
You were so profound in, stop it, I am going to cry.
Mm. Let it out. I think it's so beautiful. I'll cry with you. I'm a sympathy crier. I will be a sympathy crier
She has sympathy tears.
Yeah.
But you made such a huge difference in how I felt about myself and in my body in literally 1 hour. And I was shook, absolutely shook.
Yeah.
And I knew I was completely hooked on somatic after that. And mainly you. And I'm mainly hooked on you, Vanessa.
Ooh, this date's getting wild.
I know. I've now turned into the moderator.
It's a good thing this is virtual.
Krystyn, I appreciate you so much. And my sense is, just like I was talking about, boom, I was ready to process some stuff, right? And was thrust into this like, okay, it's going to happen now, right? And my sense is you were so ready and you have done so much work that this additional way of working, like you were ready for that. And with coaching with Somatics, I think it's about having someone there to partner with you in safety, in exploration, to remove judgment. And in reality, like, you're doing all the work, that's all you.
And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And I've been hearing more and more that mainstream, if you will call it, ways of coping with mental health issues, which, cognitive behavioral therapists, going to psychologists, different types of psychiatrists, they are now starting to partner with other modalities of healing, because just that they're seeing more success if you do that, right? Because it's not one size fits all. Like you were doing laying all the groundwork and doing all of that. And I agree, Vanessa, that had you not done that, maybe it wouldn't have been as much of an experience in a healing, because you were already doing so much work. And when it comes down to it, it is all of us working on, on ourselves.
And it's a good reminder of how connected we all are. And I think the other thing that I can say too is, if anybody that's listening to this podcast has either trauma that they've experienced to their body, or body image issues, or kind of anything surrounding the body where anything short of loving on your body, basically, which I think most of us are in, then I think that you should really explore the connection that somatic offers to be able to heal yourself in a completely different way.
What does the word somatic mean?
Yeah. So somatic comes from the Greek word soma, and the translation or explanation that I like best is the living organism in its wholeness. So that includes the body, sensation, all of that. It also includes thoughts, cognition. It includes emotional range. It includes relationality. So, how is a person in conflict, for instance, or in intimacy? And so it's looking at all of that together versus, kind of separating things out. And to go back to, like, in the West, right, and modern existence, we've tended to prioritize intellectualizing things, cognition, intelligence up here in the brain, right? And one of my teachers, who was quoting another teacher, so I don't know who this originally comes from, would say, our body is not just a brain taxi. Sometimes we think about our body as just carting around, or like the meat, the flesh and bones that helps us stay alive. And really, it's so much more than that.
And when you combine Eastern medicine too into this, like, I know the Chinese really feel that the liver is the soul of the body.
Fascinating.
Really?
I did not know that.
Yep.
I did not know that either.
I just know that because I once decided to do a liver cleanse. I felt like my soul was leaving my body at times, but I had done some research about it. But different cleanses are associated to different organs, and how they're all super interconnected. And then Jeff's good friend, who's a chiropractor, he does tapping, energy tapping. So he can tell too, even though he's working on your spine is so connected to all of your other organs. He could tell which organs or muscles were lacking based on energy responses.
A lot of the vocabulary when it comes to somatic talks about being embodied. And that is a word that is thrown around a lot. And I would love to hear your take on what it means to be embodied.
Yes. Ooh, that's such a good question. And it is a word that's thrown around a lot. And on one hand, I'm grateful for that there's a lot of awareness in the culture right now to include the body. What does that mean? And at the same time, sometimes those words or concepts can lose their potency, or, people kind of have a shortcut of, oh yeah, I know what that means. So to me, and from the take that the lens that I'm looking at, think yourself fully, slowing it down, really being aware of and fully feeling and being in tune with and in touch with all of the streams of information, all of the categories of aliveness and existence. So, and that there's alignment between all of that, right? Authenticity is another word that's thrown around a lot, or integrity. And really, to me, being in integrity or being authentic is that, the inner experience is matching the outer expression or non-expression. That's a choice as well. Does that help, or is that more?
No, I think for sure. And would you say, this is going to go deep, but it's learned, or is it innately known as the structure of a person? Do you think it's something that can be taught and adapted at any point in our life, or do you think it's something that we just have?
I think it's relearned. I hold that we all come into the world and trying to imagine what was it like to exist before language. Hold that and feel into that. So I believe that we all come into the world embodied, and we know how to do that. We don't need to effort at it because of various systems, including, the family system, school system, et cetera, and also what's rewarded, what's mirrored as valuable to that person. Often the embodied, beingness that we all know how to do gets pruned out. And then we're really doubling down, tripling down on that cognitive intelligence, numbing out. Also the world is wacko. And I think it can be an adaptive coping mechanism to be disembodied, because to really be with and feel oneself, it's almost impossible not to feel another. And there's so much pain and suffering and all of that going on. So I think it's learned, both from a just as a victim to, what the system's influences are on a person. And then I do think it can be a choice, and it could be a wise move for various reasons to choose to be disembodied to some degree.
I think emotional intelligence is coming up a lot these days. People are starting to understand it more and more. Even recently, when you were talking about the cognitive side of things, I watched a video. So it popped up randomly in my Explore page in Instagram within the last week. And this gentleman was talking about cognitive labor. And really specifically in the vein of how much extra work it was geared towards women. Women are doing in their households and in their families, because they're bearing the cognitive labor of keeping the schedule, of putting everything together, and how much harder that is cognitively on us. And I feel this very much in terms of like my divine feminine versus my divine masculine, and wanting to be in my flow versus always feeling like I need to be in the structure, I need to be in the checklist and the to-dos, and kind of honoring both sides. And so I think all of that wraps back around to talk about what's happening right now, which is this huge level of burnout in people, whether they are working or non-working, stay at home, whatever it might be. People are absolutely fried right now because they should be. They should be doing this. They should be doing that. And it's like a never-ending stream.
The pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so much overwhelm and overwork and this constant need to achieve more.
It is. It's a fucking epidemic. And it's not talked about, right? Because it's not like a COVID-19 type thing. It's just like, this happens. And, the other thing is to that, there's not a lot of solutions that are being put in places where solutions should be put in places.
Well, that's because people don't want to change the system, right? They only see most of the time one way to success. And they're not willing to deviate from that way to success if it means backtracking a couple of steps to go in a different direction. And in the long run,
it'll catch up. It's going to catch. It
right,
is catching
because
up.
you're not giving space for rest and recovery.
Right. Well, and I think it's going to catch up on an individual level, and it's going to catch up on a systemic level. I think we're already there. As a person who works with leaders day in, day out, I have a unique kind of view across sectors, across, industries, and there's so much in what you said, and I want to respond to so many different things.
I know you really, that was a jam-packed paragraph. I was like, yes,
a lot to say. I'm sorry.
Wow. Well, yes. No, it was great. It was great.
I'm happy to riff on that because first and foremost, as a person in the, professional personal development space, there can be a lot of pressure and a lot of shoulds in that world. I should be reading this book. I should be, meditating 20 times a day. I should add this thing and whatnot. And again, I'm glad it's talked about in the culture so much of, hey, here are all of these, ways that you can improve yourself. I always want to help people go back to, for the sake of what? Is it to perform better? Is it execute on the shoulds? Is it from a place of pressure? And to really help people discern into what's motivating, from within, what's motivating the desire to grow and change. And that could be in one's career. It could be feeling like they need to move up the ladder. It could be, the lean in phenomenon, right? Of you can be a phenomenal mom and an executive and a gardener and do yoga. So there's all of that. And I also think that...
And you can't.
Exactly. Well, and the person who wrote that book is at least a millionaire, if not a billionaire. And I have to wonder, what are the resources that this person has in place in order to really lean in? And we originally were not doing life alone. And, we have to hire the village now, or people who can do that are hired.
That's so true. Yep.
We have 100% talked about this on previous podcasts too.
Okay.
It takes a village to raise a child. Oh yeah. Because we talked about Up With People. And you think about, and this was a show that I went to in the 90s where they traveled the world, but it had to do with an African village where everyone chips in to help raise children and do different things because the parents have to be out in the fields getting the food for the village and getting the water for the village and whatever. Everyone has a role. And now we've just diminished all of those roles and put them into two parents. Most of the time, the majority of the time, it's the mom. I'm not going to say that the dads don't exist. They do. And there are plenty of stay-at-home fathers that will fucking relate to this too and can be like, oh no, I know exactly what they're talking about.
Right. Or single dads.
Right. So it's not gender specific, but the roles and the amount that we put on our shoulders to perform, to be all of these things, to your point, for what? What are we getting out of it? Does it equal happiness? Does it equal joy? I know for me personally, I got to the point where I was really evaluating that and finding that if my goal for the day is to be joyful and my goal for the day is to lay down my peace and have a place of I'm in control, I'm feeling directed, I'm feeling called to action, I'm feeling motivated, there were things that I had to take off my plate and I just had to make peace with it. And most of it had to do with like housework, things along those lines, because I was like, who cares?
Well, and it's like there's a huge impact on parents and children when we are constantly working towards a result, right? We're constantly working towards an academic or a result in sports or something that's going to give us that hit of dopamine and also tell us that we're not fucking it up, right? Like people just want to feel like they're doing a good job and they're accepted by their community and they're loved. And that looks like success in our current world, right? I took a course at Yale during COVID. It was actually really interesting. It was like the psychology of happiness. In it, she was talking about this study that they did where when you earned a certain amount of money and there was a threshold for happiness. And I believe at the time it was $77,000.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. And when you made $77,000, that was like the peak happiness that you would feel in your life with, a life-work balance and everything. And then people that earned, let's say, $150,000 felt like they needed to earn $250,000 to be happy. Whereas people that made $50,000 felt like they only needed to make $60,000 or $70,000 to be happy. So it really was scaled that the more money you made, or in these terms, the more success you have, the more you feel like you have to have, right? And that just continues to grow and grow and grow. When really there's a threshold for that because the stressors change and you're not taking care of the things that are really the most important because you're out here just constantly trying to achieve.
Right. Right. And what does enough look like? What does enough feel like? And that's the mean, the median, the average. And for each person to really feel into what is enough for them, what is enough personal development, what is enough, tending to the beauty of the home, what is enough in terms of parenting, and what tends to get deprioritized. Often it's the self, not always, often it's that white space that we were talking about earlier of, okay, what needs to come off the plate and what wants to be fulfilled, what wants to be tended to. And there are a lot of narratives around that of selfishness or laziness or not optimizing one's time, and efficiency is lost and things like that. And at the same time, there are different studies looking at lots of different things. One, we can't multitask. We're just switching between things, and people feel pressured to multitask. You're talking about the threshold of salary and happiness. There's so much information out there, and it's out there in the ether. And in my opinion, individuals need to have these conversations and form groups of support of, hey, we are going to push back on these systems. Maybe, it's starting small and, hey, we're going to commit to not doing too much in the home or spending a certain amount of time on ourselves or whatever it is. It can be small, just a cohort of people who love each other and want to love on each other and hold each other accountable. Accountability is part of love. And then there's moving that outward, right, into impacting bigger systems and institutions. What I've experienced is people waiting for the systems to change, waiting for the institutions to change. And it's a huge risk to opt out of all of that, to say, hey, I'm going to push back. I'm going to have work-life balance. I'm not going to want to be SVP. I'm cool with the level that I'm at. And there's a lot of pushback on that.
Well, I mean, I think too, and I just can speak from like a recent personal experience that this was not me, but people assume that if you are just working your 9 to 5, that you're not doing enough if you're clocking out at 5. And so this behavior is happening on a corporate level. And then the parents are passing this along to their kids. And it's really hard for people to see the cycle, let alone change the cycle. So I think that the advice you gave is so great in terms of like finding a small group or cohort that can really love on each other to change it. And I don't know how you guys handle this in your homes, but we've been kind of really geared towards the effort and the feel rather than the result, right? When it comes to what Evie's doing, whether it's music or sport or school, instead of applauding the result, we're applauding how hard she worked or how much heart she had. Talking about like, what did it feel like? Like just kind of changing the conversation a lot. And I know that I personally am struggling through this as a parent to figure out, how do I parent my child in a way that is embodied, that teaches her to be embodied, and at the same time allow space for her to have goals and, have achievements. Because it feels sometimes like they have to be very separate. Like you can't have both.
And I would also put out there in that same vein, how do you manage the pressure that they put on themselves to not put so much, right? Because they're in that phase of their life where they're learning time management and balance and all of that. I know I've started to move into that with Emmeline a lot, is having that pressure to do good and be good, but also still be human and be aware that you're going to fail and not everything's going to work out according to plan. And that's also okay. Parenting is really fucking hard.
It is really hard,
guys.
Well, and appreciating what both of you are saying. And Krystyn, when you were describing, praising the effort, if I heard you right, the effort, the heart, effort into it, that's growth mindset. I'm hearing fostering a growth mindset, which is awesome, versus the results. It's also good to have goals, and that can be a really fulfilling journey to put something out there, right? Of, hey, I really want to go after this. Again, it's going back to, for the sake of what's the motivation? What's the why behind it? And whose goal is it really? And sometimes we as humans, we do need to execute on other people's goals if we're opting into that, system or relationship or reward or what have you. And that's okay. From a somatic standpoint, right, to bring it back to the body, it would be slowing things down. The cognition is good. There's story, values, what values are at play here. That's all cognition, right? The meaning making machine, like that piece of it. And that's good to tune into and to unpack. And then I love the question that you asked of, like, how does it feel? And there's the feeling, we could point to a feelings chart or what have you of, like, is it bringing you joy? Are you feeling courage, right? To step out there and do something different? Are you feeling accomplished? All of that. And then there's the sensation of that. How does your body do joy when you're learning this thing? Where do you really feel that? And playing with that, depending on the age and sort of attention span or mental bandwidth and emotional and physical bandwidth left to really do that. And just introducing those concepts. I like to think of it almost like a stool, or a tripod of there's that cognition piece, there's that meaning making, there's the emotion, and then there's the sensation, and just kind of teasing those things apart.
Yeah. So if I love the associating the feeling with where it is in the body. So let's go into this a little bit. When you're working with a client and say they are feeling it in their chest, or they're feeling it, I don't know, in their calf muscle. I don't know if that's a common place to feel things, but like when a client says it's in this part of the body, what do you, as a somatic coach and healer, what do you do next? Like, what is some of the steps?
Typically, it would be, staying with that for as long as it feels appropriate. Sometimes when attention is placed on that, the calf or the chest or whatnot, then it kind of moves and changes and ebbs and flows. So tracking that for some time and some space, and then really reflecting on, some typical inquiries would be, does that feel familiar? Where else have you experienced that? Or maybe the origin story, right? We're talking about with trauma, for instance, this sensation. Can you trace that back into time? And what's your sense of when you first felt that? What was that like? What might that be connected to? And we're looking to generate awareness, so more awareness, for the sake of helping people make choices that are aligned with being and acting in a way that they want to. Those would be some places to start. There's also this notion of blending, and this is a practice that comes from the Strozzi Institute. And blending is really, if you make a fist with your hand, we might have talked about this, and you try to, this fist's job is to make a fist. I'm going to stay a fist. There's nothing that will stop me from being a fist. And some people are shaped into being like this in life, right? Like, I'm going to do the thing, right? And this is a good move sometimes. So if you try to pry open that fist with your other hand, you can do it. You can muscle it open. Typically, it might have some residue of that tension, or the shape of wanting to stay a fist. So with blending, it's trying to support the fist and being a fist. So wrapping a hand around it and pressing in, say, okay, good job. You're doing the thing. You're being a fist. You learn that because, right? And maybe exploring that. Like, what is that tending to? What was it originally intending to? And offering support in that. and then letting go. And maybe often there's a little bit of an opening there, and then working with that.
Yeah, I was talking to a girlfriend of mine. What you just said made me think of the story where her daughter is suffering from severe dyslexia. And basically, she's now in a new school that has a lot of incredible resources, and they're very hopeful. But the last couple years, they had been at a different school where they had resources, but they weren't as intentional and they weren't helping in all the right ways. And her daughter came home and was like, "Did you know that you can tighten all of the muscles inside your body?" And she was like, "Oh my God, my kid is doing Kegels at school." Like everything at school was making her feel like she wasn't good enough because she didn't fucking get it. And her whole body's reaction was to tighten and to stay in that place. And I thought, and so did she. She immediately was like, "This is not okay. Like, we have to get her into the right school with the right resources to help regulate her nervous system, her body, to know that schooling and teaching and learning, that is not the experience that we're going for." Right. And I was like, "Oh my God." And it's similar to that too, where she also she needs to be, supported in that to break out of doing those exercises. Cause I feel like as children, if they go into something that makes them feel safe and secure, they're going to continue to do that because they don't know not to do it. That's how they make themselves feel like they're in control of. So I just think it's fascinating that it can. I mean, do you have children? Do you deal with children? Is it like all ages, or do you just deal with adults?
I just work with adults.
Adults. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there somatic healers out there that do work with children?
Definitely. I've personally experienced somatic experiencing, which comes from Peter Levine. He's big in the trauma world. So I have worked with a somatic experiencing practitioner with me and my, at the time, baby. So there are people out there who will do somatic work with children. I know you were talking about clinicians, therapists, adding some of these modalities or partnering with people. There are certainly, I've come across child therapists or child, psychologists, psychotherapists who are trained maybe in EMDR, which is a little bit different, or even bringing in that emotional intelligence, somatic awareness, kind of bringing in all of those streams of information and also coping mechanisms. So the world is changing. I think it's opening up. Which is a really great thing. And I'm old school in that I want to really slow it down. Growth can look like different things of like, boom, here we go. All these practitioners are out there. There's all this information, all these modalities. And this is deep stuff that, really the West is borrowing or, grabbing from a lot of other ancient traditions that have been around for a long, long time. And to really honor that and slow it down and infuse these principles into a way of living and moving through all the domains of life. So as a parent, as a professional, as a community member, maybe working in social justice change, right? How can these principles really be woven in, braided into the way of affecting change on a personal and group level?
Mm-hmm. And long term. This isn't a get quick fix that we have come so accustomed to just loving in this country. Rather, let's learn these ways and let's communicate them with other people to help heal and then continue that on for the rest of our lives, right? I mean, I'm sure the goal is to get your clients to a place where they are changed because they've done the work and that they can take what they need because they've gotten to a place of stability maybe. And then they can always come back to you. I was talking to my chiropractor yesterday and I love it's a husband and wife team. They're young and they specialize in pregnancy in women, and they do the Webster method, but they're not those chiropractors that are like, all right, you're going to need to come in for a 32-week session and 3 times a week and blah, 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 and they do the same manipulations, which I can't stand. I freaking can't stand those chiropractors, just personal choice. And she said to me that they're really focused on maintaining relationships with their clients, where if they get to a good place and they go away for 6 months or a year and then they come back, there's no shaming. There's no like, where have you been? Your back's so fucked up, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like so good.
Maintenance.
Yeah, just so good to see you. Let's take a look and see what's going on. Because we get to a point with ourselves, because I am a big believer in the human body is such an incredible vessel, and we have the ability to heal ourselves and change ourselves if we put the work in. And I think that is beautiful that you can go do this work, find these techniques, these methods, and utilize them. And then if you fall down at some point, come back to them.
I do want to broach a subject, and you can tell us if you're comfortable talking with this or not about this. So you were mentioning our ability to heal our own body, which I also think that our bodies have incredible abilities. But I also know that there are people with chronic illness that might feel like a trigger, like that they're doing something wrong, that they're not able to heal their own body.
Sure.
If you're comfortable talking about your own personal experience
we can
with that,
yeah,
I would love that. Take it away.
I'm so glad you brought that up. This falls right in line with the pressures and the shoulds for me. And it's been wild and humbling to be in this space for quite a number of years now, of teachers who I revere, Peter Levine, I mentioned, Gabor Mate, and others, who talk about various forms of dis-ease, being manifested in the body, and that various healers will talk about if that sort of misalignment is healed, then the illness might go away. Not everybody says that, to be clear. And there can be pressure in this space to, if one is clearing all the channels and doing the work, that, everyone should be a picture of, kind of perfect health and vitality and all of that. I am not that person. I am not that person. I have multiple chronic illnesses, and it's been a wild journey. And that's an example of chronic illness and chronic pain where it's a good move for me to calibrate myself and maybe pull out of body in some places with awareness and choice. And that took me a long time to get comfortable with that. I was sort of trying to ram myself forward of, no, I need to stay with it. And I need to fully embody. And I really now have come full circle to have a lot of gratitude for my capacity to know when to drop in fully, when to not, when to dip a toe in. And the meaning making that I have is there are so many people who have chronic illnesses this day and age, and I get to walk alongside some of those people. I do have a scholarship that offers a small number of seats per year to people who live with chronic illnesses and or chronic pain, and do this type of coaching with them. It's not focused on, like, I am not a chronic pain coach, if that makes sense. And we talk about, having limited capacity for doing all the things, right? And then when someone has on their plate chronic illness, chronic pain, that's taking up space on their plate. So it becomes even more important to manage energy levels, time, making choices that are, important and serving that person. So it's a big topic. I do think there can be some guilting or shaming that goes on in this space. Again, not from the practitioners that I mentioned directly. I have been in circles where people are following those methods and really believe, and I think are coming from a good place of, oh, if the people I'm working with just let go of whatever the initial hurt, pain, trauma trigger is, then they will no longer be ill. And I have full faith in that has happened to some people, and that's phenomenal. And I do believe that that's possible. And we all walk a certain path. It has been an incredible teacher to me to learn how to be with and love on myself when I'm feeling terrible. Yeah. So it's an interesting topic. And I think that treading lightly and honoring that body's going to do what body's going to do. And there's so much going on, and just honoring that in the moment while walking alongside somebody.
I have a very good friend who is a psychologist. In her background is in that, and she was a social worker for a long time. And she taught me a phrase that I have found to be very useful, which is "and also." So you can be doing all of these things to try to heal your body in this really beautiful, holistic way, and also still have your body be the body it is and have the issues it has. And that is okay. And not feeling that pressure to not allow yourself that space. I think that, it's like anything else. We allow ourselves to put pressure on ourselves without analyzing why we're doing it, then it can take on a life of its own too.
Right.
Absolutely. And also in the body as well. I love that. And feeling into, okay, right now I have certain nerve pain that's singing at me. And also I'm tuning into my heart space and my belly, which feels really at ease and really open and warm and connected with you, and holding awareness. And also, even in the body with sensation, can be incredibly helpful for the nervous system. And to put a term to that, pendulation, which is also from Peter Levine. I've done trainings with Peter Levine and somatic experiencing. I am not a certified somatic experiencing practitioner, so I'm somatic experiencing informed. So just putting that out there. And he talks about pendulation, which is really helpful to pendulate, to move between awareness of these different sensations. And even I like to invite people to try to hold awareness of both if possible. Sometimes that's not possible. And sometimes it's pendulating to something neutral, just okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did an exercise with me once, a couple of times actually, where it was physically turning into choice. Would that be considered pendulation, kind of what you're talking about?
If I remember correctly, we were doing a Strozy practice, and facing a certain direction or a certain way of being or opportunity, and then turning and facing the other direction. Is that what we did?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's actually a Strozy practice. And it's looking at, okay, how can we stay centered in the midst of that change, or in the midst of, changing directions or perspectives.
So would you explain a little bit more of either practices or ideas for this embodiment in daily life when it comes to, whether you're dealing with chronic illness, or you are trying to goal set, or you're trying to parent, or you're just trying to get by?
Yeah.
Just trying to
Amen to that.
get through the day.
Yes, I feel that. Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna toss out a couple of quickies, and then maybe we could do a longer form practice together. Does that sound good?
Yep, we're back to the throuple, guys.
Oh man. All right.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm a 12-year-old boy, apparently.
All right. Let's do it though.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. All right. So first is feel your feet, and to really feel that. And some people, their way in might be more of cognition, might be more imagination, of imagining the shape, the literal shape that your feet are making when it makes contact with the floor right now, right? So that could be a way in, could be maybe leveraging imagination further, imagining feeling into growing roots into the ground. How far down do you want to go? Yeah, and just really feeling the sensation of that. Maybe it's magnets, kind of feeling like oppositely charged magnets, where your feet are one charge and the floor or the ground beneath you are another charge, and feeling that power and that connection and that sturdiness there. So feel your feet. Connect with your heart space is another one. So if you want to place a hand on your heart, you can do one hand. You could do a hand on top of that with both hands, whatever feels right. And just taking a moment to find the right placement and the right pressure that feels right to you. And calibrating to whatever it is you need right now. Maybe it's acceptance, maybe it's love, maybe it's support. You have your own back, if you will, and just feeling into that intention with the physical feedback of that hand on your heart. It's another short one. Breathing. People talk about this all the time. I used to get kind of pissed about it of like, okay, I've done breath meditation pretty regularly for 20 years. I still hate it. Hate is a strong word. I dislike it. And that's why I still do it, because it's really helping me grow that muscle over time of that attention. I'm not advocating for 20-minute long breath meditation, really feeling your breath. And again, there are different ways in. Somatic cues could be feeling the temperature of the air on the inhale through the nostrils and exhaling through the mouth, and feeling the distinction between the temperature of the air between the nostril inhale and exhale through the mouth. Could also be pretty classic, is just feeling the breath moving the abdomen. I like to do a kind of a 360 breath. So instead of belly rise, belly fall, really feeling muscles and rib cage and spine movement when inhaling. So we can try that together. So inhaling and just noticing, feeling into what moves. And when you exhale, feeling the dropping, the contraction, and how that moves. So those are some quick things, and really people making it their own, right? It might be like, oh, that inspired an idea, and then just trying that on. Somatics loves repetition. So finding something to tie that to anchor that to as a reminder. For me in COVID, early days of COVID, life was crazy. It was wacky. My 2 young kids were home. At the time I was, in the earlier days of launching my business. It was just a crazy time. And I needed a lot of reminders to center and to come back home to myself. So for me, it was water, washing my hands, helping my kids wash their hands. And there was so much of that going on. Rinsing a dish. It evolved, rinsing a dish, swapping the laundry. So there were all these opportunities of, oh yeah, oh right, I have a body. Oh right, my feet, feel them on the floor. Okay, yeah, where's my heart? And just kind of having like a choose your own adventure menu in mind of, based on my state and what I'm navigating, what might I need to help me in that moment. Centering these practices, it's not always about down regulating. I think that can be the assumption or the majority. Sometimes it's about like, whoo, all right, I've had a long day. I am exhausted. I'm feeling pain, and I need to put my kids to bed, and they're resisting that, right? So yes, there might be some patience, some endurance, some, okay, I need to stay calm, centered, connected with my kids. Often I need to energize myself up. A quick cue for that could be you're breathing up into the chest. That's a very energizing breath versus calming things down low, slow in the belly. It's up regulating. So those are some ideas. And then maybe we could do Strozzi style centering if we have time for it. Would you like to?
Yes,
All right, let's do it.
I'm just learning so much because Krystyn and I talk a lot about this. I find parenting, when you allow it to really gift you, it's a lot about inner child bullshit that you're still dealing with. At least for me, I'm constantly like, why is that so triggering to me? I ask that a lot. And at night, when I'm putting the kids to bed, especially Isla, she can be trying at times. I'm going to use some of this because I find instead of calming myself down, I can be like, you need to stay calm, Rachel, in my brain. You need to not react. But on, I would say, a 75, maybe 65% chance, I am more reactionary in the evening, where I'm like, I have zero patience left. So you guys, it's either my way or the highway, and you're going to lose because it's just going to be my way. Which, again, like, you say these things, and I know, I'm like, that's not healthy. Like, you should not, like, you need to get your shit together, Rachel. These are the internal things I say to myself. But again, it's like a power thing too, where it's like, no, I'm the parent. I'm going to win. You are the child. You must go to bed. And I turn into a cave person. But I think that these are really great tricks that I can use in those moments, especially the feet one. That's fantastic. The breathing, I think, is more challenging, but I think the feet thing for me will work very well.
I really loved too that you brought awareness to the fact that our energy doesn't always have to de-escalate. and that we can bring our energy up. And Charlie and I both talk a lot about this in terms of our teaching. If we were going to teach at this very low de-escalated level all of the time, we're never going to get the engagement from our students that really helps them like capture the moment of, especially with what we do in music, right? And feeling that. So I love the little practice, amping your energy up. Let's do something a little bit different. We don't always have to be lower energy.
Right. And even with kids too. And sometimes that is what's needed, right? And going to be effective in the moment. And sometimes not. And again, this is going back to like what we were talking about of finding that balance between what is the pressure here? What am I calling myself into? Sometimes there's a little bit of both. Sometimes there might be some pressure, but just being aware of that and labeling it and still moving forward in choice can be empowering and important.
Right. Because my goal is to have my children fall asleep in a beautiful way that allows them to get good, solid, quality sleep, not just have them go to sleep. If I'm yelling at them, demanding that they go to sleep, that is not what I'm trying to do ultimately, right?
Because imagine if somebody was yelling at you to go to
Totally.
sleep, right? Like we would all be like, you can fuck right off.
Can you imagine?
That's going to do the opposite.
I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start calling both of you and be like, go the fuck to sleep, you two.
I should just think about my mom when I do it, like my mom yelling at me at 42, and I'd be like, why are you in my house? You know what I mean? Like, I think that is such a fun exercise. Again, to bring it back to the fact that we are all humans. We're all adapting. You don't get a manual on how to be a parent. I mean, there's plenty of books out there, but nothing is real life. Okay. Like there are things but you can't read a book while you're in the middle of experiencing whatever that situation is either. It's not like, you know what, just table that for a second. I'm going to go reference this book before I spank you or before I consequence you or, all the things.
Yeah.
So I think that this has been very helpful because I find at nighttime is my hard time with my kids. I can be, and I am not that mom that wanted to ever fall asleep with my children. I've always been the mom that I need some me space. It's me time. And I need you guys to go to sleep. Love you so much. But it's like that book, go the fuck to bed.
Yes.
But in a loving, amazing way. So thank you for teaching us that because I find that to be very helpful.
I would like to circle back to your centering practice.
Okay. All right. Let's do it. There's so much more.
Yes.
There's so much. I'm having to rein it in.
I know.
Vanessa, you can be a repeat guest.
Yes, we would love.
I mean, this isn't a one and done.
Okay.
No.
Okay. That helps.
And we also would really like to come to you.
I would love that so much.
Connecticut, here we come.
Connecticut.
I was just talking about it with my mom because, she grew up in Connecticut. I think we talked about this when we first met. And I was like, yeah. I was like, Vanessa lives in this small town, Trumbull. And she didn't think I would know it. But I was like, oh, yeah, well, my dad graduated high school from Trumbull High.
See, it was meant to be. It was meant to be. Can I say one thing about the parenting before we get into centering?
You can say all the things.
Okay. I am so appreciating all the layers that you're talking about here with noticing the patterns, what we would call conditioned tendencies of how you were shaped, right? And what does parental authority look and sound like? And yet you want to do it a different way, right? And so just like the fist of bringing tenderness, bringing a sort of mindset of, oh yeah, of course you're responding like that, because how many reps do you have of experiencing that as the way? And just exploring, maybe, do you want to on purpose rev it up? I don't know at what time, right? Of like, hey, let's work with this energy. I don't know if your kids are super energized or what, or maybe even yourself to metabolize some of that energy in a healthy way, in a way that you want to, so that you can make space on your plate, have a little more white space to show up the way that you want. And absolutely like prying that fist open too. If your kid's the fist, right, to shift the analogy, then forcing it is just going to make that fist tighten down. So, and I'm appreciating just all the self-awareness that you have and the layers that you have as you're looking at some patterns, and not even the like, oh, that's not what I want to do. And that can be a whole thing, having feelings about the feelings. And then it just can have so many layers. So
well, thank you for saying that. I think a lot of times resources that exist out there paint a lot of these perfect parents. There's one woman in particular, I don't know her name, and I probably wouldn't say it because I find how she delivers information like really fucking annoying. And she's super intelligent and smart and like on all of these television shows for how to understand children and the psychology behind them. But every time I watch one of her videos, I'm like, fuck you. I was like, that's not even real life. I was like, you are so unrelatable.
It needs to be real. It needs to be relatable.
All right.
It needs to be relatable. Okay. So let's center from there. Let's center from the FU place. So starting there. Yeah. Bring it in. So you always want to work with what is in the moment. So if a person's revved up, if a person's feeling depleted, right? Of just noticing that and greeting it. So you can leave your eyes open. You can close them. I'm going to walk us through. I feel like I'm a sponsored person from Strozzi, and this is Strozzi style centering. So we're going to walk through length, width, depth, and center. All right. So here we go. So first, just starting with greeting feeling body. Yeah. So there are thoughts, there are emotions. You've moved through a lot of the day already. We've had this beautiful conversation. So all that is behind you and just really greeting the moment here. Letting gravity take over. Sometimes we effort at holding ourselves or propping ourselves up. So really just letting the floor do the work, or if you're sitting down, letting the chair do the work. And just kind of melting into gravity supporting you and holding you up. We're going to move into length. So the idea is to introduce some space and some length and pull up. So maybe imagining a string pulling up toward the ceiling or the sky. Imagining some space opening up between the vertebrae of the spine. And at the same time, settling in, settling down. So relaxing muscle onto bone, trusting that your skeletal frame will hold you up. You don't have to do much work. Checking alignment. So checking how ears are aligned over shoulders, how shoulders are aligned over hips, how hips are aligned over knees, knees over ankles, feeling your feet. Maybe even pressing into the floor a little bit if that feels good. Noticing your breath. If it wants to drop down, let it drop down. If it wants to move up and be energized, let it do that. But just really greeting what is. And your body will often tell you if it wants to change or even just start to change on its own. So just being with all of that. Maybe relaxing your jaw, checking in there, relaxing your throat. And length is connected to our dignity. So what are you a stand for? What matters to you? Yeah, so really connecting into a felt sense of dignity. Dignity can't be given and it can't be taken away. It is just there within and for you. Now we're going to move to width. Width is connected to relational space. So first feeling for how wide do you want to be? So maybe rocking back and forth a little bit, just letting yourself settle into the right width. Some people have patterns of maybe being more porous or more boundaryless. Some people have patterns of being more guarded. It could depend, right, on the context, but just in general. So I want to remind everyone that you're at choice of how expansive or how held in you want to be at any given moment. Yeah, so just feeling for that. Where do the edges of you end and the rest of the world begin? And how close to that or far into do you want to feel into existence? It could be feeling for a four-legged friend, a cat, or a dog in your space. It could be feeling for another person in your room or in your space. Could be feeling for plants, either in your room, in your home, outside of the windows. And again, you can expand this out to include shared humanity, community. Maybe it's your block. Or it can be just really tuning into yourself and your own relationality, your own width. A nice cue for this can be breath. So I'm going to invite you to place a hand on either rib cage and just take a couple of breaths, just noticing how that opens up your width and how your width opens and narrows as you breathe, kind of like a clamshell gently opening and closing with the breath. Feeling into your pelvic bowl, your hips, feeling the width there, feeling the width of your feet, broadening across your heart space, your clavicles. It's kind of like an unfurling of a fern. Again, you're at choice of how open or narrow you want to be. Now we're going to move to depth. So we spend a lot of our time in front body interacting with people on screens in person. So we're going to start with back body. And our depth is connected to our capacity and also timeline, horizon of time. So we're just going to honor history, lived history. What's at your back? This could be just since the beginning of this conversation and this podcast. What have you uncovered? What have you learned about yourself? Could be this day, this week, this year, this season. Maybe it's even further back, to lived family history. Maybe it's even ancestors at your back, and just really noticing and honoring the path that you have walked so far, feeling into that. I'm going to invite you to take your weight back, your center of gravity back just a little bit, so you can kind of imagine your feet sinking into or digging into sand, and just taking your weight back a little bit. And then rocking forward and backwards, just really gently, and finding that set point, what feels right for you here. And then bringing that awareness into the space in between. Maybe place a hand behind the small of your back and a hand low on your belly, if that feels all right. And just really feeling for the space in between those two hands. Feeling for you, the human, all the systems that are working just on their own. The organs, the breath, noticing any streaming, temperature, pressure, noticing any vacant or numb areas as well. There's no right or wrong, good or bad. It's just noticing. It's just information. And bringing all of that awareness forward. We're living into, breathing into each moment as it happens, as it unfolds. There is also a horizon of time in front of you. Maybe there's vision, purpose for what you want to do with maybe what you uncovered about yourself today, or maybe the rest of the day. Just noticing that. Coming back home, back to yourself right here, right now, in this moment in time. Feeling the tip of your nose, checking in with your throat, your chest, your heart space, your belly. Maybe feeling into if your belly wants to relax. If you're not sure, you can tighten or tense your belly on purpose and let it go. Maybe do that a couple of times. Feeling the tops of your thighs, your shins, tops of your feet. And really bringing awareness into the 360 length, width, depth. If you can, maybe that's an idea. Maybe that's an imagined sense of those dimensions. Maybe you really feel it. Either way is okay. Can be an intention too. And now we're going to end with center, which is right below your belly button. So if you're comfortable with this, you can place a thumb in your belly button, if that feels all right, and just let your palm hang down. That is your center. That's what I'm talking about when I say center here. Really just connecting with that space. This is a center of gravity in sports, in martial arts. It can also be connected to our intuition, our gut for things. It's definitely a powerhouse. So even just connecting with this space in a physical way can open things up for some people. Sometimes connecting center with your heart space can be powerful too. So if you want to, you can place a hand on your heart as well, if that feels right. So hand under the belly button, hand on the heart. and really just connecting with what you care about, what matters to you. How do you want to use either the rest of your days on this time we have? What do you want to impact? What do you want to experience? What do you want to change? Big picture, it could also be just for the next 5 minutes, just tuning into how you are and what you need, greeting yourself. And there's no rush. Whenever you're ready, you can just let your hands drop back down to your side. And if your eyes were closed, you can open them. And somatics loves distinction. So just ending with a felt sense of noticing, wow, what changed? What did that produce in you? What's different now? Awesome.
That was amazing.
I told you she's fucking magical.
Yeah, that was just fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm still like in a state.
It was interesting. It's been a few months since you and I have done that practice together. I can distinctly remember the very first time we did that practice and what I visualized in my mind's eye when you were running me through it. And for me, it was when you started talking about depth and my depth. That had been something that I had never explored before. It was very much this galaxy inside me. If I was envisioning from, let's say, my neck down to my navel, it was a galaxy, and below it was very much just thick, dark thorns kind of protecting that lower root chakra. And so today I had a very different experience, which I think is interesting, where it was this huge expansive sky really through that whole torso area. And then just this beautiful garden of vibrant plants that were living and thriving around the navel area now, with a tangle of roots below them that's like, hey, there's still some work to be done, but you're headed on the right direction, Krystyn.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
So cool.
So much to celebrate there.
I hope that the people that are listening really go back to this space and go back to this practice time and time and time again and do the work for yourself.
Well, let's tell all of our listeners how they can find Vanessa, and how, if they are interested in doing something either virtually or if they want somebody in person, like where is the resources for them to find a somatic healer in their neck of the woods, and other resources that potentially could be utilized. I'm a big fan of YouTube, so I'm not sure if you have a YouTube channel yet, or if there's some of your other folks that you follow that you believe in, if that's because that's a lot of work. Have a YouTube channel.
There's so much out there. Yeah. So I'm gonna keep it simple, and I appreciate that. So if people are interested in working with me as a somatic coach, or even if somatics is like, dip a toe into that, but that's not really fully my thing. Either way, I'm here for all of it. And they can check me out at my website, which is vanessasestina.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can just look up Vanessa Sestina. So that's how people can find me. And I'm pretty lo-fi. I'm not on YouTube or anything like that, unfortunately.
Nope, that's totally okay. I'm here to support that too. I think that's, again, taking some of that pressure and being like, no.
Right. I'm not really out there in any way on social media, and I've realized that's how I like it. So I'm keeping it that way. And there are so many people who are out there. So if people want to get plugged in with Strozzi, they can look up the Strozzi Institute, and Strozzi does have a free dojo where people can pop online, and one of their master teachers will guide through some practices or some good stuff, and it's free. I believe it's once a month on Tuesdays, I believe. So that's a way to check them out. Also, there are Strozzi coaches who live and work in various states and countries. So people could pop on there and look for a Strozzi coach that way. I'm a big fan. I mentioned a couple of names, throughout our discussion, of Peter Levine, people would like to check out a somatic experiencing practitioner, they can look. I don't remember the name of his website where the practitioners are, but if you just search somatic experiencing practitioner, it should pull up like a directory so people can look for somebody in their area. And then Gabor Mate. Gabor Mate, I'm a huge fan. He has an approach, a method called compassionate inquiry that weaves some somatics in. It's not a somatic lineage necessarily, and it does weave in a lot of somatics and that tenderness, that care of like, oh yeah, we've learned some tendencies, and how to really honor that. So those are my top peeps.
I love that. And just to reiterate, she does work with people virtually.
Yes.
Yes. So I know we have listeners all over the globe now. So her website again is vanessasestina.com, and that's SESTINA for you guys.
We will link it in the information below. Let's wrap this bad boy up. Reflection and closing.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, okay, Vanessa.
Mm-hmm.
If you could give one piece of advice to your future self, what would it be?
I could give one piece of advice to my future self. So not my future self to me now.
Yeah. So you can go drop a note in time to your future self.
I want to answer this question.
It would be to savor all the directions of time, to savor the moment, to savor the past, to savor the future even before it's happened, but just to really slow down, enjoy it. And everything is changing so rapidly to just really slow it down.
I think that's absolutely beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And applicable.
Very much so.
I mean, that could be, everybody could apply that to their future selves.
Can I ask you two to share? What would you say to your future?
So I'm going to tell a little story just because I love telling stories. And I recently came upon a new show that I've been watching called The Discovery of Witches. It was a British show that then was brought over to the States with AMC. There's only 3 seasons, so I'm very sad. In that show, there's vampires, demons, and witches. The one witch is a time stepper. Basically, she can go back into time and she can do all of that. And it's interesting because they do some in your future self kind of deal where it's like they gift, like her dad, she inherited it from her dad. So her dad left different gifts throughout time for her to experience and find, and all of it. It's a really well written.
Really interesting.
It's a really well written show. But I think I would tell my future self that you're on the right path and continue to heed that intuition, continue to nurture and grow my gifts and believe in myself, and that you're doing a really fucking great job.
I think very similarly, I would give myself the reminder to stop in that moment and ground myself and to just be whoever I am at whatever age I am. Just be, and be accepting of it and be loving of it, and remind myself that I'm enough.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly in that moment. If I could give myself a little hug, I'd probably do that too.
I love that.
Oh my God, you guys, this episode has been this might be my favorite.
Yeah. This has been definitely one that I have taken so much from. I don't know how much I've contributed to, but I feel like a changed person.
This has been so fun. Thanks for the conversation. Thanks for sharing so much with people out there. There's a lot of need to feel connected to a caring way of putting it all out there for people. Like, I just feel so much from both of you, how much you care. And it's like, there are gatekeepers, right? And then there's like the opposite of that, where you're just putting it all out. And I love that. And I'm happy to be able to be a part of that in this way.
No, thank you so much for sharing your gifts and your knowledge and your story and being open and authentic with us.
Yeah. Thank you for being in our tribe and being such a huge part of my life.
Thank you.
You're going to cry
No,
again?
I'm going to cry. I'm going to say now. I held it together, but now I can, woo. All right.
Damn it. I did cry again. All right,
See,
I'm going to go sob when we're done. Okay, guys.
It's funny that you said earlier about celebrating, Vanessa, and you should really celebrate that to Krystyn, because I was at the beer distributor because, in Pennsylvania, you can only buy alcohol in certain buildings and blah, 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 because we're a commonwealth. Anyways, I found this pumpkin cider and I was like, ooh, and it's gluten-free. And I brought a 6-pack and I walked in. I was like, well, Charles said, I have a pie pumpkin, but it has a moldy butt. And I was like, I don't want your moldy butt pumpkin, but here's some pumpkin cider I brought for you guys.
Trade you this pumpkin, this moldy pumpkin for some cider.
So we are going to have a little celebratory beverage with our lunch.
Oh, so okay. So next time has to be in person because I am also gluten free and I love all things pumpkin. So whatever, even if it's
we'll pour you a glass.
We will.
Yes. All right.
We'll put it with Walter, our resident skeleton here.
Yeah, Walter can enjoy it.
Send me a picture because I'm imagining something and I want to see how far off I am of what and who Walter is.
Yeah. You should have one when you're done. I think I sent one at the beginning of this episode.
Okay.
Well, guys, thank you for being with us today. This has been absolutely one of my favorite episodes ever. Vanessa, you are a shining light in this world, and I am so lucky to know you. Rachel, thank you for being my partner in this. I love you so much.
I love you too. All right, women lifting women up. Let's go.
Let's go. We'll see you guys later.
All right.